Okay, waiting pilgrims. Let me know if you can hear me. Sound's working okay. I should have it, but we'll find out. Gotta start a little early and let everybody kind of get connected. Um, I do want to let everybody know that feel free to kind of put a question out there in the chat, and uh, I'll try to get to them and answer them as we go along here in the class. So we're going to be covering Psalm 24 first and then going to Psalm 23. Um, so we'll give it a few more minutes here because I had it going live here in about 2 minutes from now. So we'll give it a little bit of time just to let everybody get connected. I hope everybody is really fighting through our current situation, fighting to maintain peace, fighting to maintain faith, fighting to maintain a connection, and fighting the isolation that this can try and bring upon us. Because it's like fighting the good fight of faith. Like I posted today on Facebook that we need to really work at not letting this overcome us, but rather we overcome the challenges with our faith and our goodness and our effort to do good things and to reach out, connect with people. So I hope you're not letting this wear on you and get you down. Hope your faith stays strong through it all. But we've got a good month. It's only April 1st, and we've got a good month of challenges. So I hope everybody remains safe and vigilant in prayer over the next month. And let's hope that as we move into May that we really do have some encouraging news, that we begin to see a little bit of a light at the end of this isolated tunnel that we all are going to live in. I imagine all the young people will someday tell youngsters, you don't know what it was like in 2020. And, we had to stay at home. We were in this horrific war, staying home, watching Netflix all day. It was horrible. So, anyway, we'll start here in a minute or so. It should be about 7 o'clock. I think we got about 10 viewers on at the moment. I appreciate everybody joining me tonight. And I do know that some are watching later. Did get a nice note from Sarah Fleming about Sunday's sermon. I think she watched it after the fact and replied to it. So welcome everybody. And as I said to the few that were here a couple minutes ago, feel free to chat out a question or anything as we go through, and I'll try to answer them if I can. So you can see the essential outline of Psalm 24. I'm going to read a few things of it and just a little bit of background, at least what some people think. I don't know if there's any way to know this for sure, but some commentators believe this is reflecting David going and getting the ark and bringing it back to Jerusalem when he was dancing and they were playing music, and the excitement to bringing the ark to Jerusalem may have been the background of this particular psalm. And so if you might think about that and just the excitement and the how they felt as they were carrying the ark into Jerusalem for the first time after it had been at somebody's house for a few months, after Uzzah died, touching it, and then before that, after it had been in Philistines' hands for quite a while. And so thinking about that, let's kind of read through here, and we'll just kind of read the first couple of verses to start. It says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein. For he has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the rivers. The very first thing he mentions, and this, by the way, is quoted, I think, in 1 Corinthians 10. Paul quotes this passage telling us that the earth is the Lord's. But the second part of that first line is, and the fullness thereof, essentially means, and everything in it. So you and I, all the stuff in our house, all the stuff in our nations, all the stuff in the universe, and all of the, what we like to say at the moment, even the viruses are his. And so, because he's made it all, it's all his. He owns it all, he controls it all, and he is going to help us know how we can dwell in his tabernacle or in his temple with him. That's kind of what the psalm is talking about. He says, because he asks the question in verse 3, who shall ascend the hill of the Lord? And who shall stand in his holy place? So who can go up onto his mountain? He's like, who can go stand with God? Not everybody would feel comfortable even trying to do that. And so, but the question's a good one. Who among us can go and stand with God? And he says, he who has clean hands and a pure heart, who does not lift up his soul to what is false and does not swear deceitfully. Now I want to stop for a moment at verse 4 because it's really important. And that's kind of what I put up here on the outline. Three things really combine what's being taught there. First off, he's talking about having clean hands. That means our behavior, our actions. That our actions are right, that our behavior is good, that we haven't, hurt others, and even the things that if we have done things, ideally we have not left them undone, that we have reconciled with people we have hurt, that we have repaid people that we might have hurt in some way. And so our hands, our behavior, our actions are good. And so he says, but the second part is then having a pure heart. To have, and that really goes to the intentions. Because sometimes we can do things that we get praised for, but in reality, we might have done it just for the praise. We might not have done it because we really were trying to honor God or trying to help another or because we love somebody else, but we wanted the adulation, the praise from others to say, wow, look how awesome he is. And so we very often can get caught up in those two things always not being in line, that our actions don't always mirror our intentions. And it really goes the other ways as well, and we understand that. Sometimes we have the absolute best of intentions, and we want to do the right thing, and we just don't. We blow it. We mess up for different variety of reasons, but we had a good intention, but we realized, wow, that was awful. I really stumbled over that. And really, in both of those situations, we have to repent. We've got to change that. We got to change not only the attitude, but also the behavior. And very often, it's easy to look at one and not the other, because you and I don't always know what somebody's intention was. We can see what the action was. So sometimes we impugn intentions. We say, well, they did something that hurt us, and wow, therefore they hate us, or they don't like us, or we give a lot of list of reasons, and we begin to assign some sort of evil intention on their part. And we don't always know that's true. But sometimes people do great things and we think, oh, they must be really loving and kind. And, well, sometimes they just weren't. But it sure looked that way. We need to combine both of them. if we really want to follow God, both of those things are important. Then the last one, though, is really critical as well. And for them, that meant not worshiping other idols, but that they were committed to their God. And he said that they do not lift up his soul to what is false. And he's talking about idols, idol worshiping, calling upon other gods. You and I probably wouldn't fall into the trap of worshiping some idol, but we probably can fall into the trap of making other things more important than God, or other things are more important than helping or doing good or being with God's people or lifting them up or giving God glory with all of our actions and all of our life. And so very often we can have God kind of put into a little cubby like they would have done with an idol, and then they would have addressed that idol sometimes, but sometimes we have God in a little bit of a cubby, and we kind of come to God when we want God. We come to God when we think it's important, but we don't always come to God, and God's not just always with us, walking with us. Very often in times like these, we're like, where is God? What's going on? Why isn't he helping? Why isn't he, doing? Why am I suffering? But then when everything's great, sometimes we forget him, put him up on the shelf. And so we end up having an idol that really becomes more about self. And it becomes about, what am I really after? What am I really wanting? As opposed to what is God really wanting? And if I really appreciate all that God has given me, do I and am I fully committed to his goals, to his purpose, and not just my own? And I think very often religious people fall into this trap of we use religion for something we want rather than devoting ourselves to the full calling of the religion. And in this case, God. Not idol worship or worship of other people or worship of certain philosophies, but do we really serve God? And those three things. What's our behavior like? What's our attitude like? What's our commitment like? And then the last part of this, he says, he will receive a blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. So when those three things are lined up, we're going to be blessed. And we will receive from God not only our salvation, but he talks about righteousness. And he says, such is the generation of those who seek him, who seek the face of God of Jacob. If we really seek God, he says, we'll find him. Jesus promised that in the Gospels. He's telling us here, if we really seek after him, if we really desire to be with him and ascend to his holy mountain, he says, then we will be part of that generation that is saved, that is made righteous, and who will see and find God. He goes on and he says, lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Now, what is that image? And this is where I think it really gives this image of us kind of approaching into a temple or a gated city. And he's talking about the gates and lifting up the head, you gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors. And I think he's giving us a clue that he's not talking about a specific city, a specific place or specific doors or a specific building, but he's talking about ancient doors. And so that this temple, this dwelling that God is approaching and entering is an ancient one. And the King of glory is about to come in. And he says, who is this King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty. The Lord, mighty in battle. Now that word Lord is the name of God, Yahweh, or Jehovah, as some people say. And he says, he's telling us that Yahweh is the King of glory, that he is the creator of all the earth. He's the one who's made everything. given us everything, the one who lifts us up, the one who brings us salvation and righteousness, if we will heed him, if we will seek him, if we will do the things that he has called for us to do. And so he says, lift up your heads, O gates, lift them up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. Now, one of the things that I wanted to start with Psalm 24 and this idea that our God is our King and that he is the King of all creation, that he is the King of everything, owns everything, is in control of everything. Because of that, we can have great confidence when we're with him that he can protect us and save us. And so when you go back into Psalm 23 and you find out that the Lord is also our shepherd, then knowing the King of all the earth and the creator of all the earth is also our shepherd ought to bring us great comfort. You know, it makes me think, though, that much like David is a shadow of Jesus, that Jesus would be the son of David who sits upon his throne forever. But David was a shepherd who became a king. And I've said this before in lessons, even in the last year or so, but Jesus is a king who became a shepherd. And he became a shepherd for all of us, to help us and see us through even the most difficult of times. And so let's kind of go on. This is one of those Psalms that I think a lot of people know pretty well. Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. And the first three, there's three things I want you to notice underneath what I have, Psalm 23 there. And the first three verses are about me not being in want, that I'm going to have everything I need. The fourth verse really talks about me fearing no evil. And then the last verse, which happens in verse 5 and 6, is that I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So I shall not want, I will fear no evil, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Those are really the three key things that he's trying to get us to understand. That in the first few verses here, when he talks about the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And obviously, he's giving the image of sheep and a shepherd. And you can go read about shepherd who actually teach about all the things being said here and how it connects to what a shepherd does for sheep, who I never really understood how stupid they were and how needy they were until I read about it. I didn't realize sheep were not only dumb and in constant need of help, but they have essentially no ability to protect themselves. They constantly need and be shown where to lie down and what water to drink. They can get, they'll go out into the water and get taken away by a river that's too strong. Sheep, and I think a lot of us don't like the idea that we're that needy, that we are that helpless. But I think that's exactly what God is telling us. We really are sheep. And we are sheep that sometimes don't understand. We act like goats, stubborn and stiff-necked a lot of times. But in reality, we are sheep who need a shepherd, because without a shepherd, we don't know what we're doing. And we're kind of lost in this world. So he's telling us, because I'm a sheep and I have this great shepherd, I'm going to have everything I need. He's going to bring me to the places that I can graze. He's not going to bring me to places where it's going to hurt me. Now, you can throw out all kinds of junk for a goat. Goats, goats, I found out, not only will just eat weeds and garbage plants, but they'll eat like the tails of horses and stuff. So sometimes you see goats with horses. My daughter doesn't want to have any goats with her horses because she likes to get their tail nice and long. And she really hates the idea of a goat coming along and chewing on their tail, which apparently they do a lot. Sheep, on the other hand, don't do much of any of those things. And, we use them for food and we use them for their wool. But, if they eat things like a goat does, they're going to get sick and die. So they need to be told the right things to eat. They need the right stuff. They need the right water and the right food. They need to be guided to what is good and what is not good. And so when we make up our own mind that we decided what's good, regardless of what God said, and we go out and do it, very much we're acting like goats. And we go out, even though we're sheep, we're acting like goats, and we do a lot of things that harm us. But if we're listening to God, if we're hearing Him, if we hear the voice of the shepherd, like John chapter 10 talks about, then we can be guided and helped along the way. Our path can be safe, can be smooth for us. Even in trials like we have at the moment, kind of a comfy trial in a lot of ways, though I know it's difficult for a lot of people to be isolated and alone and can lead to depression. But hopefully it helps us all understand that even if we are alone for a while, we really aren't alone. That God is always with us and He is always guiding us. We just need to be able to hear. And so He not only leads me beside those still waters so I won't drown myself, but He restores my soul. He leads me in the right path to take so I don't get eaten by the wolves. And He does it because His name is on us. It's like, He talks about He does it for His name's sake, but it's like He's branded us and He's given us, God's brand, and He said, those are my people. And so He leads us this way because He wants everybody to know what His people are like, what His sheep are like. And then He says in verse 4, and even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, so even when I'm walking through a valley that might be really dangerous to me, or might be full of wolves and might, destroy me or cost me my life if I wasn't with Him, I can go through that with peace because I know He's with me. And so I think we look around in the world and we do see a lot of fear. One of the things I've really been noticing is how afraid so many people are. Because the idea that, they might die at any moment really terrifies people. And I know none of us would look forward to, I'm going to die tomorrow. We're not seeking that. We want to live forever with God. But we're also not afraid of that. Even though we don't look forward to it, might be distressed by it, like Jesus was when He was going to be crucified and be killed. But yet, we know God will overcome that for us. And so we don't have to be afraid. But I look at the world and the way they react, and especially in countries where they don't have a whole lot of faith, I think the fear is heightened. Because it's like, in their sense, life is all you have. And so if I walk through the valley of the shadow of the death and death comes and gets me, I might be in trouble. And my life might be over. But you and I understand something, that my life isn't over. Even if you take this body. Even if the virus gets to it. Whether it's this one or another one. My life isn't over. My life is just beginning. And so He says, even when I walk through that valley with the shadow of death hanging everywhere, and it's like, oh wow, this is terrifying. He says, I don't have to be afraid of evil. I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Now notice he says here, he doesn't say anybody else is with him. Very often we get our courage from one another, and it's good to have one another. But there are times, much like Elijah or Jesus when he was out in the wilderness for 40 days, sometimes we are alone and there isn't somebody around to help us. We need to have the same trust then that our God is still with us, even in those moments that others might not be there to help us. And he says, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Now, I don't know if he meant this, but when I picture that when he says the rod and the staff here, I picture the cross. Him carrying that beam on his own shoulders and even became too heavy for him to bear so that others helped him. And going to that cross for me, his rod and his staff. So he wasn't a shepherd in the sense of, having this the stick with the, hook on the end. But his staff in the cross comforts me. Can't ever take it away. Nobody can take it away from me. Nobody can remove it from me. We can be isolated and I can be, locked away someplace, but I can't lose that. And so no matter where I go, even in the valley of the shadow of death, I've got his rod and his staff and comforting me. He says, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So now he talks about actually setting a place for me to eat. And that place for me to eat is in his house. That my place is his house. And he's the one who's going to anoint me with oil. And I don't think we should think of that in a religious sense of anointing, but rather more in a kind of coming in from the outside and being washed and cleaning up. Kind of when you've been outside and you've been running around, you've been doing something, and you come home and you wash your hands, you wash your face, you get ready, maybe eat some dinner. I think that's what he's kind of talking about here. That he's trying to help us understand that he gives us all these things, that he prepares this place for us to eat, and he will wash us and clean us all up. And then he's going to pour out into our cup all that we can drink. It's overflowing. It's not half full. You talk about people kind of by nature being, a half full person or a half empty person, whether you're an optimist or a pessimist. But what he's trying to get us to see is that it's not about half full, half empty. It's about, I've got more than I've ever can need or use. And that he will give me more than I will ever even know. And so that what I have, this cup can't hold. That's what my cup is. My cup, it's an unending, never goes dry. That, by the way, that image is what I usually think of when I picture Jesus feeding the 5,000 and the fish. Every time they reached in for fish or every time they reached in for bread, they just keep taking more out because there was no end to it. Or like Elijah did for the widow and her son, no end to the flour, no end to the oil. So no matter how long it went, even though she had enough for like one more meal, it never ended. That's what I think he's talking about, that our cup overflows. It's a never-ending cup that he fills and will always fill for us. And then he says, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Now, this word mercy is the one I've talked a lot about in the last few years, and that Hebrew word hesed, which really mirrors, I think, the concept of grace in the New Testament. That mercy, his steadfast love for me, his love and commitment and forgiveness and merciful nature will always be with me. They follow me all the days of my life. And it isn't this shepherd of mine, by the way, he happens to own everything. He happens to control everything. And so that idea, it's one of the reasons why I like looking at 24 before 23, is the idea that my shepherd is actually this powerful is really amazing. That somebody that powerful, somebody that great, somebody that awesome would think so much of me that he would come and take care of me when I needed the help, which is all the time. And he says, so surely this goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So this wonderful, merciful, loving kindness that he's is going to follow me all through this life, all through this world. But my dwelling with him in his house, in his holy place, in his holy hill, that's not going to go away. Even when this flesh is gone, I still have that last part. I still have that I am living with him, like Psalm 24 talks about, that I am dwelling with him or standing with him in his holy place, in his holy hill. So that's kind of the thrust of what I wanted to talk about today. Does anybody have any questions about Psalm 24 or Psalm 23 that I might try and answer? Go ahead, I'll give you a moment to type something in if you do. I do hope didn't have sound issues. Hopefully, I think we didn't have any jiggling of the camera. I've kind of set it up here so that I have something to set my tablet on, and I've got my own remote, that I use at church all the time, to fast forward through slides without having to touch the desk that causes my camera to jiggle so much. So, I am really thankful for all the people who have joined us. I see, one's already dropped off. Doesn't look like we have any questions yet. I'll give it about another minute, go until about 7:30 anyway, and then I'll go ahead and end the stream. So if you're done, you can go ahead and drop off if you'd like, but feel free to jot in a question if you've got one. A little note for you who are still listening. Next Wednesday, I will be joining Jeff Carr in his kind of daily chat with another preacher friend of his. And he's doing them starting next week, I think just Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I think next Wednesday I'll be doing that with him at noon our time. So hope everybody has a wonderful night. Take care of yourself. Please be safe. Stay home as much as possible unless you absolutely need something. Let me know if you do need anything. I do have a lot of supplies for anybody who might be in need. And if we can help you in any way, please reach out to the elders or me and let us know what we can do for you. Please try to take care of one another and really stay vigilant in prayers. Thank you, everybody.